Yes. Although I'm not sure who he said was going to MC, but Ken, if you want
You
to.
did.
Oh,
You were going to.
I'm going to. That's good. I got the slides. I just forgot my role. All right. So welcome everybody. Good to have you here at 1 Million Cups. For those of you who are new and may not know about 1 Million Cups, it is part of the Kauffman Foundation. It's a national organization that focuses on helping remove obstacles for entrepreneurs. So just like we're having coffee in our group, there's over 100 chapters all across the country, Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. in their respective time zones. They are doing the same thing. We do have at least one new person here, our presenter today. So Dumi, if you want to just introduce yourself, obviously you have time later, but I'd love for you to say your name, company, and how you heard about us.
Thank you, Jen, for the warm introduction. My name is Dumi. I am the co-founder of a company called Shanda Studio, which is a podcast editing software for beginners. And how I heard about this wonderful organization is through Jen Dalton, who so kindly invited me yesterday. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you said yes on such a short turnaround time, but I know your material is spot on and outstanding, so I knew you could be here. What I would ask is for folks in the room, if you can scan the QR code and just check in, that would be great. We are working on increasing our virtual engagement and also online. So you just grab your phone, scan the QR code, and check in. This allows us to give presenters swag and really help engage the community. So if we're doing networking events where we all come together, this lets us have swag for that too. So you could be a winner. You are a winner, but you could even be more of a winner. Perfect. You'll see that QR code on a couple of other slides. So even though I click forward, don't feel stressed about, hey, wait, you skipped ahead. It does take a lot of people to make this happen, but more hands makes light work for each of us. So thank you to the organizing team you see on the call today. And also our brand ambassadors, Dan Lender and John Foster. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's all about spreading the word. This is a free community where we give free feedback. So as I said earlier, it is national and local. We've actually had presenters from all over the country and even globally. Obviously, we love supporting businesses here in the DMV area and in Fairfax County in particular. This is about presentations, not pitches. So although we all wish we were millionaire trillionaires, we're not trying to award funds, although we can make introductions. This is really about connecting and building a great business community that you can reach out to. It is obviously run by business owners. This is all volunteer. We're not paid. We just believe in entrepreneurs and we believe in giving back and helping. We are also radically and intentionally inclusive. So we love having businesses of any size, any background. It can be an idea, or it can be 3 or 4 years into creation. We welcome everybody here. Many businesses might be pivoting. We're a great place to have them stop and talk. John Rudenberg, just so I'm not a talking head the whole time, would you mind speaking about Mason Enterprise Center?
I'll be happy to. So Mason Enterprise has been a partner of ours for a couple of years. It's a phenomenal facility led by Eddie Hill, a phenomenal facilitator. So if you're a small business, a startup, you need a place to hang your shingle. The Mason Center is much more than just office space. It's very programmatic. They're involved in guiding you and building you and making your business strong. We're lucky to have the Mason Center as one of our 2 coffee sponsors. I guess there are once a month space sponsor now when we meet in person. So thanks to Mason and to the group for helping us.
Thank you so much, John. Jen Dalton, I'm a coffee sponsor this month. My company is Brand Mirror. My focus is utilizing reputation and the personal brand of CEOs and executives to grow their business faster. I think the more clarity, confidence you can provide your audience, the easier it is for them to choose to work with you. So if that's something you're struggling with, or you want to think about your personal brand and how you're utilizing that to attract the right talent, to build up your business as you're doing pitch competitions, things like that, please reach out and I can help. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us this morning. How our meetings work, in case you are new, we take a few minutes to go through our weekly 1 Million Cup spiel, which you've seen. Then we open it up to our presenter, which is Dumi today, and he'll talk for 6 to 8 minutes. And then our moderator, who will identify themselves in chat, will be moderating questions from the group. You can ask questions for clarification. You can just make suggestions if you've already got ideas. We try to capture everything in chat, and it is recorded to me, so you can jot things down, but I would also say just focus on the group and the interactions. We do love it when our answers and questions are concise. Sometimes we forget because we get super excited. So if we call you out and we're like, hey, thank you so much, that means wrap it up and we're going to move on to the next question or thought. And you can share one idea and come back and share another idea later. So don't feel like you can only share once. Sharing is caring. Okay. Obviously, we keep it positive and constructive. I think most of us know that. But here are some examples of what you might say if you have a different perspective from someone. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce Dumi from Shanda Studio. Met him through Georgetown. He's been very successful securing funding and launching next week, we believe, knock on wood, his company. I've seen the beta. It's fantastic. I encourage you to learn more. With that, though, I will turn it over, Dumi, to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jen. Appreciate you taking the time. So as Jen mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Shanda Studio, which is a podcast editing software which aims to enable voices by making podcast production simpler and easier, especially for beginners. So go to the next slide. And our question for today is, what is the best way to optimize production speed of a remote tech team? I think we've been very fortunate to be able to win money, of course, through pitch competitions. And through that money, we've been able to build a team. My co-founder is a product manager and he's very good at that. Then we have 2 developers that are offshore. So co-founders in New York, developers, one is in Egypt, one is in India, and are really great. But I think because of the time zone differential, sometimes speed becomes an issue. So we've moved our processes to tools like Notion, etc. But I think the thing we're problem solving now is when we launch, we know that we're going to have a lot of demand from a features perspective, but we want to be able to fulfill that demand by being fast in the way in which we write code and ship features. So that's the question. It's a bit specific, but I thought I'd throw it out there and see what we can get from different perspectives. So the next slide, please. So, but first a little bit about me and my story. So I come from Zimbabwe. You might hear that I have an accent, and Zimbabwe is a beautiful place and with beautiful people, but the media was for the most part controlled by the state. So what you found was that there was limited perspective when it came to diverse voices and perspectives. So in many ways, I grew up with watching a lot of American television, British television, South African television, but not a whole lot of local television because there was one TV station and very limited radio stations. So the older I grew, I felt that the more I traveled to places like Scotland and went abroad, etc., I just felt a lot that I craved local stories more as a sense of identity. So years later, podcasts became the first medium that were truly, I guess, democratized and a way through which people could engage with the community on a local level. So I started my own podcast called Zimbabwean Voices, and I interviewed local change makers in my community doing amazing work locally. So from business people to people in philanthropy, et cetera, on sport. And to this day, it's one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. And it had a really meaningful impact on me and my community. So we produced 32 episodes, had 200 monthly listeners, just under 5,000 plays. And we also threw like a little fundraiser for kids during COVID that couldn't go to school because of lack of funds. And we send kids to school. So we built this beautiful community with this podcast. But I found it incredibly expensive. And I'll go into that more but later. But the total production cost of this whole thing was about $1,600. And per episode, it took me about 3.5 hours to post-produce after about an hour's worth of content. So the learning curve was steep, and I just felt that it could be easier. So when I dug into the problem to figure out if it was just me, on the next slide, please, I started realizing that this isn't just me that felt this way. So podcasting actually is quite a real struggle if you've never done it before. So as I mentioned before, editing is long. It takes 4 to 6 hours to edit a recording. And if you don't want to do it yourself, you have to outsource it. But when you go to these outsourcing platforms to freelancers, they're all charging between $100 to $400 per episode, which is pretty expensive when you want to do it consistently. So it's expensive to outsource. And then even once you outsource it, it takes a long time to get your product back, 3 to 5 days. And then finally, if you've never edited audio before, most audio editing softwares look like the user interface that you see on the screen there, which is just way too technical to use for the average person. So as a solution, we said, okay, as we dug into the industry, well, let's look at this industry on a macro level to figure out, we see these micro issues, but on a macro level, let's see what's going on. When we look at the demand, we see that there's 6 million podcast shows, and they're growing at about 32% a year. And I think on an industry level, it's about a $20 billion industry at this stage. So it's growing significantly on the demand side. But when you look at the supply side, you see that people that are making the product, the podcasters, 75% of them don't get past episode 3 to 5. So everyone's starting and kind of crashing and burning as they start. And only 25% or so really get past that initial hurdle. So for the next slide, we said, how can we make this easier? Then when we dug in, we interviewed about 100 people to figure out what else they were feeling. And it turned out there were kind of 4 key features that are required for a beginner to go from, I've made a recording, to I've shipped my product to my audience. And most people take a lot of time to learn what those key features are. So number 1, editing the actual content. So we made it a lot more easier for a person to just see what they actually recorded and cut out parts of the content that they don't want. So for example, if you're shooting and recording content, you could be having a great recording, and then your child walks in the room and then starts talking to you, and that ends up in your content. And there are all these small things you don't think about that end up in the raw material. And those have to be edited out. And it takes time to learn about how to do that. The second thing sometimes people do is add intro and outro music to their content specifically to give it a branded feel. And you have to learn about, how do I stitch intro and outro music to a main recording that's been edited? That's a bit of a learning curve. The third step, you have to name your product. You had this podcast recording, but you have to give it a title. You have to give it a description to tell us how it actually, what you just discussed over the past hour. And that's a very manual task. So we automated that step through AI. And the last step, of course, is just previewing what you just made. I've made all of these things, made my edits. I have to listen back to it and either publish it or download it to distribute it to where it needs to get to. And we spent months really thinking about what the 4 key features are. And we feel that this is the best, most streamlined way to do it. And this is just a very small snapshot to how our UI looks like. It looks more robust, of course, on a big screen. But in essence, our process, we feel, is a lot more faster, cheaper, and quicker than outsourcing. And you can do it yourself through this simple and intuitive user interface. Next slide, please. So our target audience. On a macro level, it's more early stage podcasters. We feel that people are, of course, frustrated, people that are burnt out in the early stages of editing, that are unsure on what next to do because they've never made this product before, or they're aspiring to launch a podcast. If we go a little bit more on a granular level, on a B2B perspective, we've targeted life coaches and VCs as people that use podcast as a personal branding tool to generate clients or deal flow for their companies. Now, on a B2C perspective, because a lot of students on campus have to make podcasts as part of their assignments, and a lot of them have their own podcasts, we've used the Georgetown community to go to market that way. And the thing that we're testing to see is who is more responsive to our solution. Is it more B2B or is it more B2C undergrad students? And that's what we're testing right now as we go to market. But right now, of course, what's been really great is that as we've been testing our hypothesis, we've generated a wait list of people from across the world. And right now we've got about 50 or so people, but that's growing. And I know once we launch, we'll increase that number significantly with the aim of converting those users into, of course, paying users. So next slide, please. Now our business model. So how do we actually make money? So with most people, when we interview them, we all want to try something for free first before we know how it actually works. So we're giving it about what we're testing first is about 2 hours per month. And by that is, if I have a half-an-hour recording, I can upload it to our platform. You can edit it, tweak it, and then we just track your usage time. And if you find value in it and you want to go beyond that 2-hour mark and get unlimited access to our platform, we have a flat rate of $11.99. If you remember the previous slide, I said outsourcing right now takes between $100 to $400 per episode. We're trying to bring that down to and that's a variable cost. We're bringing that to a fixed cost of $11.99. And what that costs us right now is about $1.29, and we've got healthy gross margins of about 90% if a person produces 5 hours. And that's kind of what our model is. That's what we're testing out going forward. Next slide, please. Now, competition, you might say, okay, well, Dumi, who else is in this market, right? Who else is, surely you can't be the only person that has thought about this as a solution. So what we've found, if I go to the top right corner, we've seen brands like Adobe Premiere or Descript that are kind of making, I would say, high-tech audio content production, which is great for a professional or a person that is a little bit more later stage, I would say, to some degree. But for a beginner, it can be a bit intimidating. And we found the same if you go a bit lower on the bottom right corner, Adobe Audition, also a little bit feature heavy for a beginner. So we found that a lot of people are going very feature heavy or have that old traditional audio editing software that I showed you on the screen before. Now, in our particular market, we are a lot more simpler. Our goal is saying, what are the 4 key things? A lot of people have a lot of feature heavy products, which are great, but for a beginner, it's like, I just want 4 key things to get my product from A to Z. And our goal, of course, is being more affordable and simpler and easier to use. And that's kind of what we're trying to do as we offer a more streamlined solution. Next slide, please. And then finally, our roadmap. So what have we done? Where are we now and where do we want to go? So last year, October, of course, before we did anything, we just interviewed a lot of people. Then, of course, we beta tested our idea. We built landing pages, ran ads against them to see if it would just A/B test our idea to see if people want to actually subscribe to our product or not. And off the back of that, we're lucky to have some insights from our research that helped us get a grant of $10,000. With that money, we then built a prototype. Over the last summer, we built a prototype, tested that, found that it was valuable, but it was the wrong thing. Not the wrong thing, but not the right bottleneck solution for what we're trying to solve for. So we went back to the drawing board, took a few months off, went back to our data from our customers. Then we won more money. And then with that money, we then built what we've built now, which we feel very strongly about. And then over the past few months, we've been beta testing what we've built, fixing bugs, et cetera, Now we're at a point where we feel we have enough to launch and take it to market. And of course, we'll keep iterating, but I think now we're at a point now where we have to get real live data from the market and see whether what we've built is not only useful, but are people willing to pay for it? And in the long term, of course, our goal is to agree on the key features of why people love us, and then scale the product once we get that insight from our core users, then we can then scale it and iterate in the future. Next slide, please. And yeah, and thank you. So that's kind of a little bit about our story. Feel free to reach out about us if you want to hear about us. We are on a mission to try and democratize this medium and make it easy, affordable, and everybody to use and tell their story with the world. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So everyone give a round of applause. Dumi, thank you so much. So Dumi, my name is John Rutenberg. I get to be the moderator today for the Q&A. So my advice to you is when people make suggestions in particular, say thank you very much. So the more people who can suggest or ask questions, the more insights you'll get. So even when someone asks a question, nobody will feel you're rude if you give a short answer, nor should you feel you have to either defend yourself or feel that you have to justify anything, okay? And Mr. Portnoy, I saw your hand up manually. Are you scratching the air or you had a question?
No, I'm struggling a bit, I think, because of the co-host to get my hand up. Not sure exactly why. But anyhow, yes. one of the tickets that I have punched in my career is as a software developer.
Okay.
And so I've seen the kinds of things and the kind of complexities that go with, agile turnaround, quick updates, daily or multiple times a day builds. Um, it it's it's a question that I think you are very, very well suited to answer. But I think that the question for me is, where at this point have you identified bottlenecks in your development and delivery process? Is it merely the clock around the world, or is there something else that you can identify as a bottleneck that needs resolution?
Yep. So very great question, and thank you for weighing in on this. So we found that our production speeds were slow, and then we brought in one of our friends who used to work at Amazon to kind of just have us to weigh in on this as well. So what do you think? And we would meet twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, and what we found was that we would, by putting those two time blocks in the calendar, problem solving became on those two time blocks rather than being asynchronous. So what we're working on now is, of course, there's the time zone issue, but now we're saying we don't need to meet twice a week because we have this bad habit of problem solving together there. We think we can do it remotely via digital means. One, of course, through communication during the day, and then two, tracking tickets on tools like Notion. So I think the time block, number one, time zone. Number two was us problem solving at the wrong time on together. We didn't think that was the most efficient way of problem solving. And the last thing I think was seeing which developer is most responsive when something is going wrong, and then seeing which one is not. So I think it's our backend developer, but I think it's his habits that he hasn't developed around communication. So that's what we feel right now. And then we're using new processes to say, okay, let's test the better way of doing things, and then see if we can be more efficient that way. So that's the current approach we're seeing.
I've got John Foster, then Melinda, then Amy.
Thank you, John. Dumi, I got to tell you, I am very excited about what you're doing because I'm one of those people that have thought about doing podcasting, and those things that you identified are definitely things that keep me from doing it. So I'm looking forward to the further exploration of that. But around your question, I have done a little bit of work with the remote, primarily more on the data side. Had a company and we used remote people from a data standpoint. And I think the thing that we found was making sure that those people understood the product and what our vision was and what it is we were trying to do. Made things a lot more, I think, got more efficient as that communication. And, obviously communication is the key to that. But having people really understand where you're going, what it is you're doing, I think we found to be, a big help.
That's good advice, John. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent. Melinda.
Melinda, you're on mute.
I had a question about the question, and you said production speed. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're looking into ways to efficiently make it faster to produce the podcast, and that's what you're looking for ideas from us for?
Oh, sorry, I should have clarified that more. I think production speed more from a team perspective. So they have features that we know, for example, when we go live, Jen and John will say, this is great, but if you did these 4 things better, that would be so much cooler. Then we have to produce those features quickly. But I guess the concern is we believe we're going to have the demand of these features, but can we meet that demand quickly by efficiently shipping them? And that's what I mean by the production speed. It's how we are able to serve customers faster.
Can you talk about what you do in the production right now so we understand what you're doing so we can help you look at other ways for efficiencies?
Yeah, great. So essentially, of course, in the beginning, we'll talk to customers. Of course, we have this hypothesis. We'll talk to customers right now and we'll do beta testing and we'll get all this feedback. Then we'll be with our production team and then say there are these various screens that we have. Our customers are finding these particular problems across each screen. Traditionally, we always then design a solution on Figma, which is like a software that helps you prototype what it should look like. Then we'll then bring that design back to a customer and see if it resonates and makes sense with them. And if they're aligned with that, we'll then, of course, write the code for that particular software. And then that's kind of how we do it. Then, of course, once we've written the software, we'll then deploy it in an environment where we can test it first to see if it's working effectively, is it functioning well? Then once we feel strongly about that, we are then able to push it to the main website. So that whole cycle is one that has to be a lot quicker. And I think right now we're going to get better at it, but I think it's not as fast as I would like.
And you do that, not the customer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, our team would do that. Correct.
So let me jump to Amy, then I've got James, Jen, and Ken.
Dumi, this is fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And good Lord, I could only dream to have those margins. In a previous life, I was in technology. I did user requirements and testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually left when Agile became a big thing because requirements were no longer a concern. One thing that I was thinking as you were talking through, how do you know you're going to be able to respond to the new demands?
Yes.
So more of a comment than a question, I guess.
Yeah.
You're familiar with load testing on the infrastructure side of things. Please
share more on that. Please share more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I'm technical, but my co-founder is way more technical than I am.
Beautiful. Okay, it's basically you bombard the application and see if it breaks. We used to do that from a customer service perspective before we rolled out anything new.
Yep.
And it was basically a mock test, and just okay, here's 20 requests, just a number, a wild number there. Here's 20 requests, shoot it to the developers and just see, here, what are you going to do with this? And then when we scale it up to 10, but it's almost by doing it in a mock-up, it takes out some of the unknown.
Yes.
Of the process. That would, for me, that was a thing that we used to do quarterly when we knew that things were going to be changing, if we were doing a new migration,
yes,
or if we were updating new products. And so I wonder if that might be something just to try. And obviously with AI, there's plenty of new ways to do that than how we were doing it manually 100 years ago.
No, but that is very helpful. Thank you. I'll comment on that very briefly. We try to get a bunch of undergrads into one room, or like everybody try and break it together. To sit in a room and we try and break it together. And then so many issues came out of that, but it was so helpful. So I think it shouldn't just be a thing we did then, but I think to your point, continuously do it at points where that are about to launch a new feature or something. Don't lose that, because I found it incredibly helpful. But yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea, and I don't know who just mentioned it, it may have been Ken, but this idea of the corporate culture and having folks understand, where their role is. And it's hard when you're remote. I've been working with remote staff for the last 5 years. Developing that corporate culture and an understanding that everybody's driving the train, and where their role is. So there's more buy-in. But thanks so much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to just go over there and make some podcast notes.
Excellent. James up, then Jen, then Ken, then Melinda.
Dumi, awesome. Love the presentation. Needed this 5 years ago, but hey, we'll get it now.
Yeah.
So I'm a big Riverside guy. So Riverside FM is my thing, and I do love it. I love that you've kind of stripped it out and went, this is all you need, these four things. From a standpoint, so there's a couple of, I've got two quick questions, I hope. One, we want to do things faster. That's a relative term, right? So I don't know what faster really means. And I don't know if you know that. Maybe you do. But working with a remote team and knowing how things operate in your world right now and what that speed looks like, do you have clarity around what does it need to look like in order for us to kind of meet the demand that we have right now? And that's kind of part one. Part two is, once we get to that point and we get to scale, when does it break, right? This is back to Amy's point that there's going to be, so there's load time, there's load on the system, but there's also load on the resources.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the questions that we always ask our clients is, if I doubled your business tomorrow, what's going to break first? Right. And we want to identify what that is for you, like what's going to break in terms of resource. So I would be saying, if you haven't done it already, I'd be surprised if you didn't, but I wanted to bring it up anyway, that you kind of look at faster, not as faster, but like, what does it need to be? Is it a 5-hour turnaround, 3 hours? Like, what does that look like?
Yes.
And then if we doubled the business in the next 12 months or tripled it, what does the resource need to look like in order for that speed to be maintained? Right? Because that's going to be critical, right? In terms of your scalability and performance and how customers look at you. There was something else I can't remember. I might come back. There was something else I wanted to add in there, but those are two things that I would say that you kind of want to dive into and look at. But love what you're doing, brother. Love it.
That was very helpful, James.
Excellent.
That was
Jen, Jen, then Ken, then Melinda.
I love going after James Lawson with all of his smart insights. I'm going to build on something he said and then add some different stuff super quickly. One is setting expectations with developers on turnaround time, and more importantly, with customers. So to James's point, I look at platforms like Go High Level or others where they ask for customers' ideas, and then the more people click an idea, that's what gets prioritized. So understanding, one, how do you get customer input quickly? And two, what's the expectation for fixing stuff? Right? Don't beat yourself up to get to a day if it's 2 weeks. And then that's what you've set the expectation around. And I think James said that more eloquently. Just wanted to give a specific example. Two, it sounds like because you have developers that are 1099s, I'm not sure how you incent them, but I'd want you to think more about how are you incenting them to deliver, and when do you hire your first developer? So hopefully it becomes less of an issue, and knowing what you need in that developer to be successful. I actually think the time zone difference really powerful. If you have one developer in one time zone, one in the other, and you can really keep things going. The last thought would be, if you have customers, wink, wink, like me or others, maybe you do a customer roundtable where you really talk about stuff and you have a very targeted release group to give you feedback, and use that as a way to just pressure test things, like an innovation roundtable. What really should be next? So that you keep the client first and foremost.
Excellent.
That was
Mr.
it for me.
Portnoy. Ken, you're up and on mute.
Yep. Let me open my mouth. I want to, I think, build a bit on Mr. Lawson's brilliance. The question that he asked is, how fast does it need to be? And for me, I think prioritizing is going to be important, and that depending on the priority. So for example, somebody's got a critical bug. This is a really ugly bug. This needs to be fixed. Or this is a really nice feature, or this is really friction in the interface. Those are three different levels of priority, and they may require different process approaches in order to meet different requirements for speed. So that critical bug, that's hot right now. Got to go. This is friction in the interface that is causing difficulties, that's secondary, and then the next release, right? And what your release schedule is going to be for a big package of feature improvements that you can then hype in a package. You can say, hey, great new release coming out with all of these great new features. But there is no single answer to how to speed things up, because there's different speeds that you want to hit
for different things. For different
things. Exactly.
Yep.
Excellent points. Melinda, on mute.
Sorry. My question has a little bit to do with the production and everything, but an idea that I wanted to throw out there. I've been using Wix to create a website.
Yes.
And I bought the 24/7 help, which was extra money.
Yes.
You may want to add a benefit. I bought it for, I think, 3 years, because I looked at it saying, I'm not going to do this website for my garden club from after I get it up, I'm done. Somebody else is going to have to jump in. So I really like that model, and that's why I wanted to bring it into what you're doing right now, that at any point I can go for that 24/7 help.
Yes.
Wix is out of Israel, so you get people all over the world in all different time zones. So that's actually a model you could follow. And that might also increase the speed that your customers are using the podcasts. And it may be what you do is maybe you give 1 month of it or 2 weeks of it so they can try it while they're setting it up. And that might help you. And maybe it's something you do just in the very beginning so that you can get all the problems solved, because the more people you're getting in there to do things, you could say, as being part of our beta team, for the next 30 days, the people that sign up will get a free 2 weeks of help setting up and getting started and all these other things. So I just thought that what I just saw in Wix might be something you can use in what you're doing.
It's very helpful, Melinda. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Emmanuel. You're still on mute, Emmanuel.
Okay. Hi, Dumi.
Hi, Mo.
Thank you for the presentation. And what's the name? What's behind the name? And secondly, I have Libsyn, and I go back and forth trying to figure out what kind of podcasting I want to use. And because of that and other obligations, I was not able to really get into the podcasting, but there is an area that I would like to address with podcasting, and somehow your presentation, how would it relate to me?
So just I'm going to take the second question first and come to the first one. So Libsyn is obviously a hosting platform where you just upload your audio and it publishes to multiple distributors like Spotify, Apple. Is that just I'm making sure we're on the same page, right? So you have Libsyn right now? Do you have that?
Correct.
Okay, so maybe I'll take the second question first. So Libsyn is amazing for hosting and publishing to distribute multiple distribution platforms like Apple, Spotify, etc. But sometimes before the publishing process stage is an editing process that has to happen before. So I was using an example before where you could be doing your recording and then you hear your wife come into the room and she starts talking to you, or you hear like your fridge goes off, and then some sounds come into the content. And people often overlook it, but sometimes it comes into the content. So these hosting platforms allow you to publish, but there's a step before, which is sometimes editing or uploading intro and outro music, having descriptions, etc. That's tasks that have to happen before that, before you go to Libsyn. So for us, it's just streamlining the task, the main tasks before that help you get your product in a good place before it then distributes. I hope that answers your second question. The first question is twofold. Shanda is a Zimbabwean word where I come from. On the first level, it means to work to achieve something. That's the first word. On the second level, it means, like in programming, to function. So you give something inputs, it should give you an output. So in our case, you give it a story, it'll give you a podcast on the output. So to work or to function, those are the meaning behind the words.
Just to follow up, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
How would it differ from Audacity, for example, that really provides a free platform that I could edit and do all kinds of things?
So Audacity is awesome that it's free. The main difference is that if you've never edited audio before, Audacity is very technical from a user interface perspective. So with us, when you come to our recording, you upload your audio, you see the words from the dialogue of the discussion, and you just text, you edit it like it's a Word document. Whereas with Audacity or other solutions, you see waveforms. And for a person that's never looked at audio software, it can be a bit intimidating. So that's the main difference.
Excellent. That's a great explanation. I've played with Audacity for music, not for podcasts. So I want to emphasize, I had my hand raised and then I'll give it over to Jen, but I wanted to emphasize some of the comments that other people spoke, because relating to your challenge question, as you grow, there are going to be different kinds of requests. Sometimes it'll be a bug. Other times it'll be a feature request. A feature request might be 5 hours or 500 hours. So everything different. So, there are certain things you can knock 5-hour jobbies out in 25 hours. And so that's more on the turnaround has several segments. It's not just a developer time. It's the upfront prioritization that others have mentioned that I think has to be accelerated to shorten the overall turnaround time. And then again, as it relates to customer expectations, if your developer tells you a week, tell your customers 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Or 4.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you so much. And I see Jen's hand recognized as the last one for the Q&A session, I think.
I think one of the questions I had was being able to convey the why of the fix. And sometimes that may come through as you talk with developers, but that might help them understand why the sense of urgency, why this matters. What I don't know is how much of it is just a developer specific opportunity. So my other thought would be, and it sounds like you've done this to some degree, but going back and looking at all of the releases and really understanding when it took longer and why, making sure those assumptions are clear. So as you move forward, you can manage those risks. Lastly, from an agile or from a development standpoint, I don't know what the top 20 most likely issues, bugs, challenges are when you release something new, but it might make sense to get ahead of that so that if you have that top 20 list, you can kind of go, okay, for the first 6 months, here's what it might feel like. And are we staffed right? Do we have the right capacity? All of the things that other folks have mentioned. But the more you can prepare yourself, the better. And I think John Norris has one more question and then we can keep going.
My question is maybe too simple here, but I never have done a podcast. I'd like to do one. And I'm thinking about your platform, and I'm wondering if your target audience should be experienced podcasters looking to get a cheaper, easier program, or if they're just comfortable where they are because they've learned that they're not going to shift. And if you should focus on people like me and say, oh, yeah, it's cheap, it's easy to access. I don't know the speed. I probably won't overload your servers because I'm not going to have the huge audience initially. I don't know. For me, it just seems like a better audience for your services would be people thinking about podcasts and wanting to do them on a low barrier of entry from a cost perspective and a simplicity perspective. And then as you grow, maybe in your technology and your services, they'll make more sense to me. But initially, I may not need some of these services because I'm just trying to get a podcast out there that may be reaching my audience and obviously moving the needle for my business. So that's just my takeaway from a lot of the comments and your answers.
I agree with you, John. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. I think like the sweet spot might be 0 to someone who's on 0, or maybe just started and they're feeling a little bit of friction, but early stage, I totally agree with you.
And then the last piece of advice.
Go ahead, John.
Hold on. The last piece of advice is be quick, but don't hurry. Speed will kill. One thing to be quick, but you never want to hurry through things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Jen, may we turn it back to you for the very final question, and then you're the MC.
I think Ken is trying to sneak in a last question. Ken Portnoy.
Yeah, I was just curious. How big are you anticipating this monster to grow? How many licenses are you targeting for your success?
Well, so maybe I'll take a step back and say, I know James mentioned earlier that he uses Riverside, which is another podcasting platform. And I feel that there are going to be multiple players, but I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think there's going to be a lot of space for a few players. But with what AI has done, has made it possible for people around the world to tell podcasts in a much more easier and edit in a super easy way. And as the production costs become more affordable, I think the people that want to do podcasts grow significantly. So in the United States was the leading market, but now we're seeing people in Chile or South Africa. It's really growing significantly around the world. So what that means for us, it's a really great question. I definitely think we can make a multi-million-dollar business because, for example, if we have 4,000 odd users paying $20 a month, that's already a valuation of around $1 million. It's $1 million company with 4,000 users. And I know 4,000 users would definitely, that's something that we can definitely achieve. So I don't know if I want to I want to just be humble and think we can definitely build a global product that I think can become a multi-million-dollar company. But
yeah, I was asking a slightly different question. And the question is, how many users do you have to have for your exit plan? Or how many users do you need to send your 10 grandchildren to Harvard?
You know
Excuse me, they would go to Georgetown.
They'll go to Georgetown. but Ken,
yeah, because
GW
they'd
is
be
always
able to
an
get
option.
in on the graduate preference program. Yeah, I got that.
But Ken, that's a great question though. And it's a number we need to find out for ourselves.
And that's why I asked the question.
Question.
It's a rhetorical question that I think can help guide you to building out the infrastructure
for the number, right?
For the number.
Yep.
My last thought, Dumi, and we can talk offline so we don't give away secrets when we share this video. The value proposition should continue to be differentiated, and you want to have your own lane.
Yes.
I don't think you want to be another Riverside.
No.
And so whether that's socially minded or whatever that looks like, we can talk more about it. But make sure whatever you're asking developers to do, that differentiation question, will this new feature, new functionality continue to help us be differentiated? That's an important question. It's easy to be like everybody else. It's really hard to be very clear on what makes you unique and to stick with that. With that,
great point.
Thrilled to have you today. So excited to be one of your first 4,000. What else can our community help you with?
Could I just make a comment? This is one of the most high-value meetings I've been a part of. It was very valuable. It was constructive and it was very, I had a question, but I didn't think I'll get this level of detail and nuance to almost go and do my own research. I'm like, oh, these are all really great questions. And some of it weren't, there were just comments that helped shift my perspective on a lot of different things. So yeah, it's one of the best meetings I've been a part of. So thank you all for having me and for giving me.
We may ask you to record a testimonial to that effect
100%.
another time.
No, I'll gladly do it. I'm trying to see, I hope I get the comments in the chat to keep them and the
Oh,
report
you will.
and go back and.
Yeah, you'll get the whole thing so you can study it, but most critical, you got to come on a regular basis and join our community and
Like,
help the next person.
Get through your graduate program in the next 3 weeks, then come back.
Let me
And
By the way,
graduate.
I have the answers to all the tests. Just call me.
Yes, good luck on the next 3 weeks with school. That has to be the priority.
Thank you
Lots
so
of
much.
wisdom.
But
Lots of wisdom.
Jen, to get back to your original question, I think wise counsel. I think, how can we help today? Anyone who you think could get, I guess, have valuable insight. So I think I've asked for production, tech insight, and operations insight, and I've gotten that. If you think from maybe a strategic perspective around customer acquisition, or let's say distribution, product distribution, could give insight. It might not be right now, but some of that if anyone in this community thinks of somebody that can help us in a way that we maybe aren't thinking about, please reach out. I think it would be incredibly wonderful. Yeah.
Lots of thoughts and ideas.
Advice.
Lots of thoughts and ideas. The other thing I would say, Dumi, is we love having people who present come back. And we've had presenters come back with their next question 60 or 90 days later. So once you launch next week, and in the coming weeks, if you're like, okay, I want another round of wise counsel, happy to do that and happy to have you back.
Terrific. Thank you.
So next week's presenter is Anna. So please make sure you join. She has a fantastic skin bar in DC. She's a certified esthetician and makes her own skincare. However, she's in a part of DC, up in Bethesda, where the Maggiano's is, but there's less and less business there, so it's kind of not the best location. So she's trying to figure out what does she need to grow her business here. She just moved from Ohio. She's got an online business and in person. So that's sort of just some backstory for her. So thrilled to have her next week. Like I said, inclusive, different businesses. If you're interested in being an organizer or just testing it out, trying it out, let us know. Just put me in chat, as Ken says. I did want to call out a couple of upcoming events that might be helpful for folks looking for investment or connection. So April 12th, Fairfax County EDA, if you go to their website, they have the Accelerate Breakfast series where you can pitch and you can look for seed funding. If you're trying to break into the HR space and meet a lot of HR leaders, there is a fantastic group, the HR Alliance DC, potential podcast group that I can talk with you about, Dumi. But come join us at the networking happy hour. Happy to make introductions and be a connection there. April 24th, corporate social responsibility and volunteer fair. So if anybody's looking to add CSR to their business or think about it or learn more about it, highly recommend that. And I think most people are familiar with, but if not, Tian Wong's Connectpreneur, there will be pitching at this event. It's virtual and it's a great way to connect and network. But from a pitching standpoint, it is companies much further along raising significant dollars. So it's also a great learning event just to see what's out there and what's happening. If you scan the QR code, it will take you to the Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. They also have lots of events there. They do a great job of pulling in events from all over the region. If you have an event, please drop it in chat. James Lawson, I hope your event yesterday was fantastic. And if you have an upcoming event, do share. Happy to promote.
Yeah, we had a great funnel time. We actually did the webinar and we used Riverside to actually do it, which is not a webinar platform. But we tried it just for fun and it was awesome. But yeah, it's got limitations as well for that. Anyway, yeah, actually 26th of April, we are running our growth and planning workshop at the Resting Chamber. If anyone is interested in attending, let me know. We will give you a guest pass to come and spend some time with us. Starts at 9, finishes at 12. It's a half a day. But yeah, I'm going to work you through some business development strategies, and then we finish the day by creating a 90-day plan, so you know exactly what you're going to work on and why you're doing it. So yeah, April 26th.
And you will teach people how to sound Scottish and amazing.
Yes, so use this accent to get things you want. Yeah,
I think so. I think Don't underestimate the value of influence and voice. I'm telling you. All right, presenter schedule. Next week is, I believe, or not next week, excuse me, the 24th is open. If someone's interested in presenting or you want to share, please do so. And then we have Sweetgrass Advisory presenting May 1st. That will be in person at Mason Enterprise Center at Eaton Place. And it will be hybrid also. So continue to dial in or join us in person as well. I believe we are looking for a coffee sponsor, just to give everybody heads up in May. So if you'd like to be one, let us know. And again, scan the QR code. You can share this. Once we get the recording up on Facebook and LinkedIn today, you can share it. We'd love to just spread the word for business owners. Again, free advice. Can follow us on social, as I said, scan the QR code. Otherwise, that's a wrap for today. If you didn't get a chance to check in, you can drop that QR code, scan it with your phone, and check in. And again, if you want to be a coffee sponsor, you just put it in chat. Yes, I want to be a coffee sponsor, and we'll make it happen. It's not a big deal. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. Really thrilled to have everyone here. Thank you, Dumi, for a fantastic presentation, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Thank you.